In today's video, we'll discuss about Google Translate in Excel. When we talk about translation, everybody heads up to the Google Translate. Here we can translate any text into a different languages, and it is very easy to use. If we have a same functionality right into our Excel file, then it will be an awesome, right? Here I already set up my Excel file to translate any text into different language. I written a custom function in Excel to translate text into different language. If I enter a text here and enter the source language code as EN, which is English, and enter the target language code as ES, which is Spanish, then we'll have a translated text in the Excel file. Or if I want to translate this text into French language, then I can enter target language code as FR, which is a French. Then we'll have a translated text in French in Excel. So what we are doing here is we are passing this 3 input file to Google Translate and reading back the information from Google Translate in Excel. So stick with me on this video till the end and we'll see how we can set up this in Excel file. And if you are new to my channel, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified with my upcoming videos. Alright. So before setting up the Excel file, first we have to understand how Google Translate works. How many languages supports by Google and what is the language codes. Let's see how many languages supports by Google. Open the Chrome browser and navigate to this URL. You can find this link in the description below. And if you scroll down, then you can see the list of languages and the respective language code which supports by Google. You can take a copy of this list for your reference, as Google Translate need these language codes. Now let's see how Google Translate works. Add a new tab and navigate to this URL translate.google.com/m. You can find this link in the description below and press enter. It will take you to the blank medium version of Google Translate. And if you see in the URL, it has just translate.google.com/m. And if I click on this translate button here, then you can see the change in the URL. Mainly it has 3 parameters. The first parameter is source language and the parameter name is SL. We have to pass the source language code in the URL. And we have to pass the source language code. And the second parameter is target language and the parameter name is TL. And we have to pass the target language code. And the last parameter is text. And the parameter name is Q. We have to pass the text which we want to translate. We can pass these 3 parameters value directly in the URL itself. Let's enter some text after this Q equal to. Welcome to XLStudio. So I want to translate this text. In which language? In ES. So TL equal to ES. So I want to translate this text into a Spanish language. And what is my source language code? Which is SL equal to EN. This is my source language. ES is my target language. And my text is which I want to translate, that is welcome to XLStudio. And when you press enter here, then you can see the result on the page. This is my source language and this is my target language. This is my source text and this is my translated text. And if you want to translate this into different language like French, then I can enter the French language code here under TL parameter. So instead of ES, I can enter FR, which is a French, and press enter. Then you can see the translated text in French. And along with these 3 parameter, we have to add one more parameter, which is a unique code. We cannot translate this entire page into different languages. We have to encode this document, and to encode this document we have to encode this URL, and to encode this URL we have to use the Unicode, which is UTF-8, which supports most of the languages on the pages, on the forms, and the mixture of different languages. So let's add this parameter to this URL. You can add anywhere in this URL, so I am adding before the Q parameter, and the parameter name is IE equal to UTF-8. This is the parameter you have to add to support most of the languages on web pages. Put ampersand here and press enter. You can see the same result on the page. All we need is this URL, where we can pass these 3 parameters value dynamically from Excel. Let's copy this URL. Next we'll start setting up our Excel file. Let's add 3 columns here: the source text, source language code, and the target language code. And here in the next cell we'll write a custom function to read the information from Google Translate. In Excel we don't have inbuilt function to read the information from Google Translate. So what we will do, we'll write our own custom function to read information from Google Translate. Excel allows us to create our own custom function using VBA code, which is known as User Define Function, in short UDF. Let's write our own custom function. Click on Developer tab. If you don't see this Developer tab, click on File menu. Next click on Options. Next click on Customize ribbon. Here in the right hand side you can enable this developer option and click on OK. It will add Developer tab to your ribbon. Under this Developer tab, click on Visual Basic, or you can use keyboard shortcut Alt plus F11 to open Visual Basic editor. Let's add a module here. Click on Insert menu and select Module. Here we can write our own custom function. So let's enter our custom function here. The function space and the function name. You can choose any function name. I am choosing as Google Translate. This is my custom function name. Open bracket. Let's add 3 parameters to this function. And the first parameter is source text as a string, comma, and the second parameter is str source language code as a string, comma, and the third parameter is target language code as a string. Close the bracket and press enter. It will create a block of code for you. And the steps are very simple to translate text into different language. We'll divide this process into 4 steps. The first step is creating a dynamic URL. And the second step is do a web server API call using XML HTTP request. And the third step is create a HTML file using HTTP request response text. And the last step is read the translated text from HTML file using HTML web elements. So in just 4 steps we can read the translated text from the Google Translate. Let's create a variable to store the dynamic URL. You can choose any variable name here. So I'm using a variable name as strURL. Paste the URL which we have copied and press enter. And we have to make 3 parameters value dynamically, right? The first parameter is source language, which is SL equal to EN, and we have to make this part dynamic with our variable. Let's replace this value with our variable, and our variable name is str source language code. Let's copy this and replace this first parameter value with our variable. And the second parameter is target language, which is TL equal to FR, and we have to make this part dynamic. Let's replace this value with our variable, and our variable name is str target language code. Let's copy this and replace this second parameter value with our variable. And the last parameter is text, and we have to replace this text with our variable, and our variable name is str source text. Let's copy this and replace this value with our variable and press enter, and we just created our dynamic URL. And in the next step, we'll do a web server API call. Let's create a object variable here. You can choose any variable name. Next, create a object to do a web server API call. Set XML HTTP equal to create object bracket open, and the class which we have to use to do a web server API call is msxml2.server XML HTTP. This is the class we have to use to do a web server API call. Let's open this web server API URL. Space XML HTTP.open. So this method will have 5 parameters, and the first parameter is method, and we have to do a get method here, comma, and the second parameter is base URL, which is a str URL, our dynamic URL which will store in this variable, comma, and the third parameter is ASCII. Let's enter the false value for third parameter, and the fourth and fifth parameter is username and password. And to do a translation, we don't have any username and password for the Google Translate. Press enter, and next set the headers to do a web server API call. We have to add a custom headers to do a web server API call. Let's add a custom headers here, XML HTTP dot set request header. Now this property has 2 parameters value, and the first one is the header name, and the header name which we have to use to do a web server API call is user-agent, and the header value is Mozilla/5.0. This is the header value we have to use for user agent header, and depends on the Windows operating system. So in my system Windows 10 is installed, that's why I am using 10.0 here, and press enter. So it will add a custom headers to do a web server API call for Google Translate. Next, send this get method to web server XML HTTP.send. It will do a web server API call. It will do a web server API call, and press enter. So when we do a web server API call, we'll get the response back from this request, and we'll use that response to create a HTML file. Let's add a object variable to create the HTML file here. You can use any name for your variable. So I'm using variable name as object HTML as object. Next, create an object here. This is the class we have to use to create a HTML file. Let's open this HTML file using open method. Let's add the response text to this HTML file using a write method. Space XML HTTP dot response text. So we'll get the response when we do a web server API call, and we'll add that response text to this HTML file. And then next we'll close this HTML file. It will create a HTML file, it will open, and it will write the response text to this HTML file. Next it will close this HTML file. In the next we'll read the translated text from this HTML file. And to read the information from HTML file, we have to add a reference. And the reference which we have to add, that is Microsoft HTML object library. This is the library we have to enable to use the HTML elements. Click on this, click on tool menu and select references. And here you have to enable this option, Microsoft HTML object library. Enable this option and click on OK. Now whatever HTML file we created, this HTML file we have to store in object, and the object is Microsoft HTML object library. Let's create a variable here, dim. You can choose any name here as HTML document. Let's store this HTML file into this HTML object variable. Now we have stored this HTML file into this HTML document library. Next we have to read the translated text from the HTML file using the HTML web elements. Go to the Chrome browser. Here is our translated text, right? And we have to identify the position or element name of this text. Where we can find the element name? We can find the element name in the HTML DOM elements. Right click on this text and select Inspect. It will open HTML DOM elements. Here we have to identify the element name for the translated text. Click on this arrow and click on this translated text on page. It will highlight the element name line in DOM elements. You can see here it's highlighting this line. And to read the text, we have to identify the correct element name from this DOM elements. And here we have a class name, and we can use this class name to read this text. Let's create an object variable for class. You can choose any name here. Object. Set object class equal to HTML doc dot get elements by class name. So this is the property we have to use to read the information from class. So what this line of code will do is it will get the list of class name from the web page. Let's select this, get elements by class name, bracket open. Here you have to enter the class name, and the class name is result hyphen container. This is the class name. So what this object class will do is it will read the class name with this, it will read the class with this name from the HTML file. Now close the bracket. You can see here it says get elements by class. It means this is a plural, not the single. So it will read all the class names from the HTML file. If I go to this browser, in the DOM elements, we will have an ID attribute. In the entire page, ID is the unique attribute which will have only one time in entire page. But the class, we can have multiple classes with same name. In this case, we have the only one name only one class name in this page. We might get multiple classes with the same name. If we get multiple classes with the same name, then we have to tell to this code which position of class you want to refer. If we have 3 classes with same name, then which position of class you want to refer. And the number starts from 0. If you want to refer to the first class, then you have to enter 0 here in brackets. So in our case, we have only one class here with this name, but still we have to add this 0, as this HTML document will get the elements by class. It will here will get the list of class. That's why we have to enter this 0 here and press enter. Next, what we have to do is we have to read the text from this class. So we'll add a validation step here. If the HTML doc able to identify this class name, then we'll read the text from this class name. Let's add this text value to our function name, and our function name is Google Translate. So Google Translate is equal to object class dot inner text. This is the property we have to use to read the text from class. Now press enter, and in the last we'll release the memory. Set object class equal to nothing. Set object HTML equal to nothing. Set XML HTTP equal to nothing. So we are releasing the memory once we are done with. So we have created our own custom function to read the information from Google Translate. Let's click on this debug menu and select compile VBA project to see if we get any errors or not. It will validate this entire code and it will throw an error if we get any error in this code. Let's save this. Go back to our Excel file and add the input values here. So the source text is welcome to XLStudio, and the source language code is EN, which is English, and the target language code is ES, which is Spanish. If you want to translate in French, then you can enter the target language code as FR. Now let's add our custom function here. We can access this custom function like how we will access our inbuilt Excel functions. So equal to, and what is our function name? Our function name is Google Translate. You can see our custom function name is reflecting here. Let's select this. What is our first parameter to this function? The first parameter of this function is source text. Let's select the source text, which is A2, comma, and the second parameter for this function is source language code. Let's select the source language code, which is a B2, comma, and the third parameter for this function is target language code. Let's select the target language code, which is a C2. Close the bracket and press enter. This is really awesome, right? So we got our result immediately in the cell by just using this custom function. So what we are doing here is we are passing these 3 input values to Google Translate and reading back the information from Google Translate. This is really cool, right? If you want to translate in a different language, then enter the target language code here. So ES is for Spanish. If you want to translate in Hindi language, then enter the language code for Hindi, which is HI, and press enter. We'll have a result immediately in the result text cell. This is really nice, right? If I want to translate this in Spanish, then I can enter the target language code as ES, which will translate in Spanish language. Here you have to remember one thing. This custom user defined function works only in this workbook. It will not work in any other workbook. And if you want to use this Google Translate function in any workbook, then you have to save this code in personal workbook. This is really awesome, right? Now you can use this Google Translate function to translate any text into different language. In fact, I can translate this Spanish language into English also. Let's copy this text and paste here in source text box. Next, change the source language code to ES. Next, change the target language code to EN. Then we'll have a translated text in English. So you can do a vice versa also using this Google Translate function. By writing this 4 steps of code, we able to send and read translated text from Google Translate. You can write these lines of code in your workbook or file to translate right into your Excel file. If you like the content, please do like the video and make sure to subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon to get notified with my upcoming videos. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching.